2025 from a digital asset approach. How has Franklin Templeton been looking at the digital asset landscape and how have you been positioning yourself?
One of the biggest things that jumps out for me when I look at 2025 versus last year is just how much more globally focused we are. From a digital asset standpoint, we've been primarily incubating a lot of these products and strategies in the United States.
From Franklin Templeton's perspective, how are you evaluating institutional demand at the moment in 2025?
Really kind of across the board, both a willingness to be not just open to the technology, but embrace it, and then a willingness and an appetite on the asset class side to think about different ways to get exposure to it.
We are back in the Binance Studios, and joining me now I have Christopher Jensen from Franklin Templeton. Christian, thank you so much for joining today, and great to have you here. Franklin Templeton have been making serious advancements in the digital asset space, and I would love to get your take, first of all, before we dive into the conversation a little deeper. 2025 from a digital asset approach. How has Franklin Templeton been looking at the digital asset landscape and how have you been positioning yourself in that regard?
Yeah, it's a great question, and thanks. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you today. I think one of the biggest things that jumps out for me when I look at 2025 versus last year is just how much more globally focused I think we are. Even though Franklin Templeton is a global firm, right, that's been around, 80 plus years and has local offices, kind of all over the world. From a digital asset standpoint, we've been primarily incubating a lot of these products and strategies in the United States. And that's where I sit. But I think when I look at 2025, it's very much like, how do we now take these products and kind of like the blockchains that they travel on, kind of be more permissionless. And so, that's manifested itself in kind of registering some of these products, especially the security tokens in different jurisdictions, and in other parts around the world. So I think that's been one kind of change that jumps out, is just how much more global the focus is.
Yeah.
And I think that's also, I like it because it reflects, blockchains, which are, kind of open and permissionless. And so we're also in 9 public blockchains. So really trying to expand that reach at the blockchain layer as we simultaneously expand that reach around the world.
So you mentioned expand the reach for the blockchain layer, but also around the world and for clients as well.
Yeah.
When it comes to where we are on a digital asset adoption level, where would you say we are in 2025, and also kind of client sentiment when it comes to just the demand that we're seeing for digital assets?
Yeah, so this is my 3rd year in a row coming to this part of the world, and we were talking at a dinner last night. I think one of my big takeaways wasn't necessarily a particular comment from a particular conversation, but more this almost surround sound recognition that, like, I feel like this time it's actually happening in terms of the institutions are actually coming, right? So we've been in the space for 7 years, and we obviously talk to a lot of counterparts on the more traditional finance side, right? And we're talking kind of massive institutions that are really the kind of the bedrocks of our current financial system, right? And earlier on, they would explore this technology, and they would explore this asset class, and they want to get smarter on the space. Maybe do a proof of concept here or a proof of concept there. But the big takeaway this year is that it's actually happening right now. That appetite is there. I think the timing is right. When I look at, a lot of times I get a question like, hey, did I miss it? Like, or, when I look at the price of Bitcoin or whatever, am I too late? And I really think like now is actually an interesting inflection point because, DeFi, decentralized finance and kind of traditional finance, they really are at an inflection point of coming together. And that's where I think really accelerates that next stage of growth.
Absolutely. And we have some institutional events going on this week as well. And I think institutional demand is just a really interesting benchmark this year. So from Franklin Templeton's perspective, how are you evaluating institutional demand at the moment in 2025?
Yeah, lots of different things. So one is kind of anecdotally with the conversations that we have. And when we think about institutional, I mean, this can be, everything from, very small institutions to large sovereign wealth funds and kind of everything in between, pensions, endowments. And then, when I think about, for instance, like the ETF product or ETP product, when we look at the mix of buyers there, I do think we are seeing more institutional appetite Those types of products are a great way to dip your toe into digital assets. And then in terms of appetite for exposure that maybe goes beyond what's offered in those ETPs, I think we're seeing that as well. So really kind of across the board, both a willingness to be not just open to the technology, but embrace it, and then a willingness and an appetite on the asset class side to think about different ways to get exposure to it.
And now when it comes to trending kind of narratives for 2025, stablecoins have actually been a narrative that I've been reporting in crypto for many years. And suddenly stablecoins are this new buzzword that everyone's really latching onto because of the opportunities that come with stablecoin from like yield-bearing collateral, DeFi protocols, but also kind of interesting for settlement.
Yep.
So how are you also approaching kind of stablecoins in this new realm of kind of digital asset adoption?
Yeah, I mean, a common question I get from institutions and whatnot is what are the use cases, right? And obviously we can point to the use case of something like Bitcoin, one of the original use cases, but stablecoins is really, I think, one of crypto's earlier killer apps here. The ability to send a digital dollar anywhere in the world for under a second, for under a penny, without any intermediaries involved. That really is kind of a 0 to 1 moment, I feel like. And with that, you can do so much. It doesn't just impact the payments industry, as you kind of allude to, but it's a lot of times the currency pair for any other type of digital asset or even tokenized product, right? So that, in addition to its ability to earn yield or really just provide that stability when you're on chain, and have it kind of backed by something that you really feel comfortable about. So I think that's huge. I think we're going to see a lot more done there. Obviously, it's it's in vogue. People want stablecoin exposure, and that's one of the best looking charts in crypto, right up and to the right, in terms of stablecoin, total TVL and kind of volume and usage. So we're really excited about that. And I think what goes with that is the regulation behind it, right? So yeah. I do think Genius Act, the stablecoin bill, was pretty monumental, and obviously, there's more coming, right? It doesn't stop there because we still need a regulatory framework for the blockchains that these stablecoins travel on. So I think that's also encouraging. We have the kind of the first piece, and I think we feel and know that there's more coming, and so that gives people confidence as well.
And just finally, to summarize this, when it comes to opportunities that you're able to identify within Franklin Templeton, but also kind of on a broader industry level, tokenized assets, where is your positioning there? Because I think that's just been such an interesting, opportunistic element for institutions, but also for retail alike. So what's your stance at Franklin at the moment?
Yeah, we see it as a lot of kind of open space, right? And I think there's financial assets and non-financial assets, and so I come from a private credit background, where a lot of times these assets are not in the public markets, and the private asset market is actually quite substantial, right? So I think we're going to see a lot more done there. And that's on the financial side. And then when I think about kind of non-financial assets that are going to be part of your portfolio and in your digital wallet, right? We're seeing, finally tokenized Pokemon cards. I have a 12-year-old son, and he's absolutely a huge Pokemon fan. So we're seeing that take off. And I also like to collect, whiskeys, and so tokenized whiskeys, and these other things. So I think, as we think about the evolving portfolio that is captured in a digital wallet, it's going to have, crypto native assets. It's going to have tokenized, what we're referring to now as real world assets, and it's going to have non-financial assets too. And I'm going to think about my portfolio across all these different assets. And really, tokenization is what opens that up, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And finally now, because it would be a waste to not ask you here now that I have the opportunity. So your job role at Franklin is Director of Research. So we are gearing up for December 2025, where we'll be hosting our flagship event, Binance Blockchain Week in Dubai. And I'm curious to ask if there's one narrative or trend, maybe it's something that we've discussed already in this conversation, that you think should really shape one of the conversations at Binance Blockchain Week. What would that be and why?
Yeah. So I think it has to be this inflection point caused by collision that maybe has a negative connotation, right? But the coming of these two worlds, like the on-chain world and the traditional world, I think it is really happening now. We can see evidence of that in so many different ways, right? And so I think that's what excites me most as I look towards next year, 2026. And so different, kind of riffs on that theme. I think there's a lot of downstream ramifications, but that I think is the big driver of this next kind of push or leg that we're about to enter into.
such an exciting time. Thank you so much for sharing your insights today. Absolute pleasure, and look forward to seeing you all in Dubai. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.